All right, it is 6 o'clock. This is the Board of Selectmen's meeting, March 7th, and I'm calling the meeting to order. If I can get somebody to
So move.
Whiteman seconds.
waive the Zoom. Roll call.
Clock eye.
Benoit eye.
Whiteman eye.
And Nichols' eye. And this is being recorded for public broadcasting. And if we can all start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. First on the agenda is approval of the Treasury Warrant 22W18 and Payroll 22PW18.
So move.
Whiteman seconds.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Clock eye.
Benoit eye.
Whiteman eye.
And Nichols' eye, excluding any COA wages. And approval of the minutes. We have minutes from February 22nd and February 28th. I don't know if people want to do them separately. Do we have the same attendance? Not sure.
Yep.
Yep, everybody's in attendance, so it's up to you guys whether you want to do it.
Motion we do it as a group.
Okay, want to make the motion to accept, or
Motion to accept as written.
Whiteman seconds.
any discussion? Roll call.
Clock eye.
Benoit eye.
Whiteman eye.
And Nichols' eye. Great. And do we have anybody here for public comment? All right. And we will get right on to our department heads, planning board, David George.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come and provide this board an update. I'll try to be brief and to the point as much as possible. What follows here is not the overall total list. It's really a sampling of some of the major projects that the planning office is involved with. So the planning office, we're in year 3. We're trying to still build capacity and build a department pretty much from scratch. So that remains one of the highest priorities. So it is a very busy office. Some of the highlights, so currently the office is involved in the subdivision administration of 4 active subdivisions for a total of about a couple of hundred housing lots. For 2 of those subdivisions, Maple Hill Estates and Bryce Lemon Phase 2, the developer will seek street acceptance at the upcoming annual town meeting. For major land development, a special permit was recently granted by the planning board for a car wash at the Century Oil site. A special permit hearing for a marijuana facility at 78 Main Street across from the plaza is currently underway. And after the Dunkin' Donuts closes on the property next door, I understand that they will be looking to expand the site. Once they have closed, staff will be glad to help them with their site development discussion. So those 3 projects are critical because they represent commercial new growth, which is what the planning office is keen to help facilitate. And any other developers who are interested always can feel free to contact the planning office. Some other major projects, the office is working with the RDIC on the disposition of a portion of the Heights property, as folks know, for 142 housing units. Staff and the RDIC chair have been meeting every other week with the applicant's attorney and their engineer. Harbor Classic Homes is expected to have a complete plan set by the end of next week. After that, applications will be filled out and filed with the respective boards and commissions, and the permitting process will start at that point. Now, meeting every other week, I think, has been a very wise choice. With the prior engineering company, they had some issues with that engineering firm. Based upon their change in engineers, we've been meeting with them just to let them know that we're very much interested in their progress, and we want to make sure that the town understands where they are along the way. So if there's any questions that they have of the town, we can try to address those as quickly as possible. A few other projects. The office has been working with the Regional Planning Commission, the Historical Commission, and the AdCom, and just finished up 2 district local technical assistance projects. One project looks to implement recommendations made in prior reports for the scenic byway of Route 122, and the other project focuses on land preservation strategies that pertain to the Agricultural Commission and open space and preservation. And briefly, the office is working with the Master Plan Steering Committee to update the 2000 Master Plan. This is being done so far in 2 phases, with a 3rd phase expected with final funding for that. The chapters at this point in time are the housing, land use, economic development, cultural resources, and transportation. If anybody's interested to know, there's currently a survey that we're looking for folks to participate in, which captures Phase 2 and Phase 3. It's a consolidated survey. We promise that there will be no more master plan surveys after that. If people could help us out, that would be great. The survey can be found on the master plan steering webpage on the town's website. Thanks for your time. If there's any questions or comments, I'm glad to answer them. I'll try to.
If I may, just one thing for clarification, Dave, thank you for the master plan stuff. I realized over the weekend that a lot of people are confused that they already filled out the Phase 1 survey and aren't aware that there's actually a Phase 2 that covers different subjects. So I just wanted to clarify that for anybody watching or listening, that the current survey is different than the one they may have previously taken, and this one touches on town services, historical, cultural, schools, and I know you said the fourth.
Transportation.
And transportation. So it's different areas of focus than the previous. So even if they had taken the first one, the second one input is important.
And is that still on the sign?
And it's still on the sign as well.
And is it clear that it's another
It
phase?
says master plan Phase 2.
I don't know if that's, bolded or emphasized.
It is
at all.
bolded and emphasized. Part of this push was we did press for this. We had a press piece indicating that this was Phase 2. We explained that this is different than Phase 1. We tried to account for the chapters. We will be doing a follow-up push on the town's website, the Facebook page, and other means. I maybe at that point will just go in with red. This is not the same survey that you filled out before. Please help us and try to clarify that if it needs any further clarification. So that's a good point.
Yep. And I had, we had information at the Historical Society open house over the weekend. Dave's been reaching out to, I think, the Council on Aging and the schools to get that input. So the group has been doing outreach kind of more slowly than the first, but in hopes of kind of keeping a balance of responses versus a big push on the front end and a big push on the back end and nothing in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to get people to do surveys as it is, never mind a second one if they think it's repetitive
Right.
at all, so. Okay. Does anybody else have anything for Dave? Any questions or? No? All right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much. We appreciate your time. All right, we'll go to the town administrator's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me start off by saying we're going to be beginning shortly the contract negotiation with DPW. Myself and DPW Director Joe Buckley have been working on proposals and putting together all the information we need as it relates to costs going into those proposals. Sent a letter out to the union leader today asking for some dates, so hopefully we'll start that soon. As you know, we've been working through the budget process. Our FinCom director, or FinCom chairman, is here. So far, they've completed the DPW department budget, the police budget, the fire department budget, and dispatch. And this Thursday, they'll be working on the water sewer enterprise fund. So all of the major departments have already gone through FinCom. So they'll start seeing, I guess, a group of smaller departments to go forward. The board should be aware that we've been keeping track on an adjustment sheet, all the various adjustments that we have, and I sent them to the board. So you should be aware of what accounts have went up and down. As you know, the Wachusett Regional School District is a little less than what I budgeted for. Bay Path was a little bit higher. The salary in the assessor's office was a little bit too low, so we adjusted that upwards. The health insurance came down a little bit less than we expected. So right as of today, we're, I guess, in the positive in terms of where we were in the budget process. I've been working with the finance board very closely. I think they've done a good job in reviewing and asking important questions, and that process will continue, and hopefully we can bring in a much easier, a much better budget into our town meeting when the time comes.
What is the status with the meeting with the school? Has that been rescheduled?
I heard back today. We're waiting to find out if there's a room. As soon as that's done, I'll let you guys know.
Okay, thank you.
4 emails, finally got the answer.
As you know, and I know because I've sent you a bunch of documents, I've been working quite a bit the last couple of days full of work on the 61A properties and trying to update the board on the process of where we are, what choices are moving forward. I actually met with via phone conference or Zoom with a consultant for the Agricultural Commission to talk about some possibilities as well. And I know we're gonna have a much more thorough debate about that in the agenda. This Wednesday, the Economic Development Commission is gonna be meeting again. I've been working with them. Their agenda is gonna be, again, talking about the zoning map. This is their third meeting. They've already reviewed the current zoning map, and there's gonna be more discussion on that. And potentially some citizens might come to discuss that as well. They're also looking at, as you know, there's the big issue with small companies that are in residential areas. That discussion is ongoing with the board, looking at that issue as well. The board is trying to develop information to kind of move forward with where they plan on going. They would also like to talk to the Wachusett. They're trying to get a number for the two gentlemen who work for the Wachusett that came and met with us, to get them to come and meet with the board. So I've been reaching out to them. Hopefully we can set up a meeting with them as well soon to discuss that issue. I guess those are the main topics that I wanted to discuss. And I think we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna have a much more thorough discussion on the 61A property, so I'll leave that there.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the town administrator?
If I may,
Yeah.
and this might be between you, Ron, and Karen, I'm not sure. For the school discussions, will Bay Path be included in that? I know in the past we've kind of done Wachusett and Bay Path on the same nights, but then with COVID and everything, they've been separate. I wasn't sure. I know we got Bay Path's presentation. Is that all they're planning on doing, or are they planning on having a sit down, or?
We have them scheduled, I can't tell you what day we have them scheduled, but we have them scheduled. It is not the same night as Wachusett, because they had their information, so I was able to schedule them in the month of March.
Okay.
I'm sorry, if I can have one more comment. One of the other things I wanted to mention is that I'm working with the school district and with DPW Director Buckley to get some prices on the parking lots, both at the schools and town parking lots, to put it into that bonding package that we've been discussing. Dan Dede and I have been talking a lot about that. He's supposed to have his numbers in the next couple of days. I'm keeping the chairman of the Capital Improvement Committee aware of that on the emails, so with the next couple of days, hopefully they'll have all the information they need to move forward. I did meet with them and go through all the proposals that I had suggested from the facilities management plan. So I think Capital Improvement Planning Committee is in good position to start making some decisions as to how they want to move forward.
Anybody have anything else? Alrighty. Next on the agenda, discussion Rutland Sportsmen's Club change of officers, managers, resubmission, select board to approve resubmission of change of management documents and new change of officer documents required by ABCC, signatures required on LLA form. I know this has been discussed previously. I guess we finally have the documentation to move forward. Does anybody have any questions or any motions regarding approval?
So
We do have it in our packet here.
my understanding is that this was kind of formality and getting things kind of updating paperwork as to where they.
Because change in leadership.
Right.
Yep. That's all it is.
Any questions?
So what would you like for a motion?
To approve,
To approve and sign?
Yeah.
So I make a motion we approve and sign the Rutland Sportsmen's Club change of official officers and managers.
Whitman seconds.
Okay. Roll call,
Clock eye.
Benoit eye?
Whitman, aye.
and Nichols' eye. Thank you. Next, select board to vote on appointment of two candidates for WRW Trail Committee via the Open Space Committee. We
If-
also have that information
I
in the
may.
packet. Sure.
I think the information's in the packet. So this was I made the connection through the Open Space and Recreation committee that we're updating the plan, the open space plan. It wasn't necessarily through that committee that we've brought them forward. The Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee is a group that we appoint, Selectboard appoints a couple of members to. I think Dick is our primary member, and that group is forming a trails committee, which is exciting, and there's a lot of momentum there to kind of develop the trails in the Ware River watershed area. Also working with DCR and trying to get buy-in from the state as well as local, regional and national organizations that could potentially utilize the trails and everything. So there's Brett Russ was our other alternate member. He brought forth a couple names to me to recommend for the trails committee, and I reached out to Dick to confirm his input as well. So the two members, potential members, would be Joe Kane and Peter Richards. So
Are you making a motion to appoint these two?
I would like to, yes.
Okay, do it.
I'd like to make, well, I wasn't sure how much background anybody would want.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Joe Kane and Peter Richards to the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee Trails Subcommittee.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Okay.
Benoit eye?
Whitman, aye.
And Nichols, aye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you.
Next on the agenda is we have a request from a resident to purchase a vacant lot that is owned by the town on Christmas Tree Lane, lot number 22. Do you want to give a little background on the process, Ron, on this?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if he's in the audience or not. It is, okay. I've had a discussion with a gentleman who would like to purchase that property. Basically, and I'll let him correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially, the town property would allow him to level part of his property and go off into the town property and level it to make a better lot for his family and enjoyment. Very nice discussion with him, explained to him the process about how, we would have to put out a request for proposals in the general public in the process. And I know Beth has had numerous conversations with him, and he's been very diligent in following through the process. And we've explained to him that this process is somewhat painful in terms of the process. I think he's actually volunteered to help pay for some things if that need be. But I'll explain the process very, very simply. As you know, we have to follow what's called 30B state procurement law. And whenever the town sells lands, we have to put out a request for proposals and ask citizens in the whole, anywhere, in the state effectively, if they have any interest in purchasing this land. That takes some time to draft up a request for proposals. You have to submit it out to the public. You have to post it in the newspaper, all of that. And then you get the proposals back. And then the town would have to set up a screening committee, evaluate the proposals, and then make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. Also, what would be required, because I don't think it's there, is it would have to be a survey come in and actually would have to pay a surveyor to come in and map out that property specifically, because you have to draw out exactly what it is we would be selling, and that would have some cost as well to it. This is not to be mean to anyone, but this is not typically the kind of project we would do. Usually when we're doing a request for proposal to sell land, it's for an economic development project, a bigger kind of sale, not for a specific individual. We would not expect, although I guess it could happen, that somebody else might bid on the property. We wouldn't suspect that because of the nature of where the property is. It really only would benefit this one particular citizen. What makes it a little bit difficult is that obviously when we put it out for bid, you're trying to get the highest price for that property. Because nobody would have an interest but a particular citizen, it's difficult to get the quote best price for the value of the land. I want to compliment him for his diligence in moving this forward. We've had a discussion about this at a previous Board of Selectmen meeting, and it's quite frankly at this point it's up to the Board of Selectmen if they want to move forward with the process or not. That is a decision that you guys have the honor of making.
Now, I know you had mentioned in this, he had mentioned that he would be willing to pay certain expenses and stuff, but we couldn't even entertain that because we would be insinuating he's being approved to purchase the property.
Prior
so
to
we
getting
would
it,
not be able
correct.
to entertain
Right.
his paying.
Because
for
that
the
would
cost prior.
then completely ignore really the 30B, which is supposed to
Right.
open it up to the general public, and it shows that there's really only one person that has interest in this land. So it's difficult to do this, and that's why I've kind of, I'm not saying discourage them, but I want to let them know that this was not going to be an easy thing to do, you know?
Right, and like, I mean, it is a fairly long process, and it's quite a bit of work, and I don't even think the value of the property is even that high. It's just
I have no idea. That, again, that's another thing. Would you have to have an appraisal done of the property to determine what the value of the
I
property
don't think the
was?
assessed value is very high on the property.
Yeah, it's small. This is not,
Right, it's just,
40
Like
by
I said,
40.
yeah. And I think he went to the Conservation Commission, who had no problem with it because it doesn't impact any conservation areas, and it doesn't in any way hurt the town. It just is kind of awkward in terms of the way it's done, you know?
If I may,
sure.
I think this is the first I think we maybe had an email about it, but I think this is the first I've seen anything about it.
No, it was brought to the board. The board had a discussion on it at a previous meeting, I don't know, must have been 4 or so meetings ago. We had a board discussion upon it, yeah. Was that
I
news?
don't remember. I mean, this is all just kind of news to me.
Wasn't it, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, didn't we have it on the agenda before?
No, I don't
Or
think
is that
so.
just
We never
something
got
we
a
discussed
formal
in our-
request because he had come to you and.
Maybe it was
asked
just
about
one
it.
of our agenda meetings, if I
Right,
remember.
and we said if
Okay.
it was gonna be looked at, it would have to be a formal request.
My
before we need to
apologies,
review it.
we had the discussion in our preparation of agenda meeting, that's why I'm a little bit.
I just wanted to, if I
It might
feel
be
like
new
I'm
to you,
playing
right.
catch up.
No, you might be, yep.
Is there any reason that the town had this property? Was it taken, like, how did the town obtain it? Is there any water sewer issues that the town would have it? I mean,
I imagine we owned it for years, Joe. What was it, just open space land that the town had?
I think it's tax title.
It's tax title?
Yeah,
We took it at some point in the past under tax title?
that's my understanding.
that was what I was thinking, just through the development process or something. It was never developed, but I don't know.
Usually in tax title property, is it, again, if it has value, we put it up for auction.
Mhm.
So if it was tax title, it could have been maybe put up for auction and then never purchased. I just don't
So-
know, I wasn't here when that
It's-
occurred.
Not to be, I think if you look at the map, it looks like that lot 22 was going to be part of a road coming down through to wherever.
It was never finished.
That was never finished. And the same with on the other side, it says lot 34, if you look at that map. So I think, Peter,
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
Skip has the right of it. Christmas Tree Lane comes down and has a T, and that this requester is an abutter to that T, and the very edge of it is the property in question. There isn't, I believe there's a little bit of the end of the road is actually on the property, though I haven't done a survey to know that for sure.
Okay, so Ron, we don't know what this end piece is where the road was gonna continue, right?
Yeah, I
So
don't.
this would actually be an access to this area if it was gonna be opened up into a road, correct?
That's a better question of conservation or DPW, I don't know the
Yeah.
answer.
There are wetlands down the hill beyond where that lane would go if it had ever been extended. And that property is now owned by the town. It's part of the property that houses Central Tree Middle School. So that's how far that large lot goes.
Okay.
In my
So this
understanding,
abuts town property as well,
Yes.
another,
Abuts the
okay.
heights.
in my understanding, this would not give him an additional building lot or anything.
It
so he
is
couldn't
not
build
about the
a house.
heights.
No, but it's an accessibility, and it's an assessment.
I thought it was on the other side. So looking at the full map, it
The-
looks like it's on the heights, closer to the heights
There's
side.
lot 22, which is the one that's under discussion. There's the person who wishes to purchase it, his property, and then there's the heights.
Right. No. I'm talking about coming off of Forest Hill. I thought it was to the, if you made a right onto Christmas Tree, but it's not. It's if you made the left
You
onto
make a
Christmas
left,
Tree.
that's
So,
correct.
But it looks like if the road continued, that would go right towards the heights, right?
It would go right towards the driveway to Central Tree, if it were to continue on far enough.
so, I mean, I have a whole lot of questions kind of swirling in my head. One of mine is there any value in, I don't want to necessarily prohibit it, but is there any value in having a conversation with RDIC to see if there's any value to this?
no.
I think,
For the
I think,
heights,
I think the biggest
access.
thing is gonna be cost prohibitive. It's gonna be
Right.
very expensive for the town to sell it, and it's not very much value, other than if it has access to the heights, it may have value, or keeping it open.
That's what
and-
I'm talking about, like, as far as should the town hold on to it for the heights accessibility piece? I don't know, and that's not in my wheelhouse. I mean, I would rather have a little bit more input from either planning and or RDIC. I don't want to be a hindrance to the property owner either. He's trying to better his drainage with mindfulness of conservation and everything also. So
The point that the chair makes, though, is a pretty good point, is that there's a lot of time and effort in going through the whole RFP process, advertising it, surveying it, appraising it, and there really would be very little benefit to the town in terms of that process. So that, and again, we don't normally, as much as I have a lot of respect for the way he's presented this, we normally don't do this kind of thing for individual citizens, but he's going through the process in the way he's supposed to. It's appropriate to be discussed and it's appropriate to be considered. But there's a lot of these financial issues that you wonder about. I don't know about the heights thing, to be honest with you. That's a better land use question, but in spite of, even without that, the financial issues are, we don't have anything budgeted for an appraisal or any of that stuff. So. The survey. If I could, Mr. Chairman, just a question. Did I present it, what you said, accurately?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
I just want to make sure I don't say anything
Yeah,
that's
if there's
inaccurate.
any other questions on it, I can answer.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm accurate in what I'm describing.
Because by the looks of this, it's only like 41 square feet, 40 by 41. You can't do anything with it. You can't build a house on it.
No, it's really just to
You can't
smooth
do
out and
nothing
level his
with it.
land, right?
Right. Because otherwise, if I level the land, it's gonna have this awkward drop off where lot 22 is. And right now, the lot 22 is not being maintained, so I was just gonna level that off and be able to maintain it, mow it, take care of it.
Mr. Chair, I actually have two other questions. I don't know how it complicates it. Is Christmas Tree Lane a private road or a town road?
I think it's town.
Town road. So,
But not the whole, some of that, I think it was originally longer than what, per plan.
right, so my only question is there an easement or other right-of-way through that property because of being effectively part of a road?
Not that I know.
No, okay.
I mean, I guess my concern is that there'd be no benefit to the town selling it. It would be more of an expense, would be the concern.
Is there a way to roll in those expenses on the back end? After the purchase price has been named, then you roll
Be
those-
reimbursed. The problem with that is that I don't even have any money budgeted to do those initial expenses in the budget, because we obviously we didn't plan for this.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have any money in my original
And
budget
there's
to even do it.
no
That's part
guarantee
of-
you would get it, and if you didn't get it, then we would have no arrangement. To me, if you had somebody that had a
Oh,
question.
there you
Yeah, I
go.
just noticed Tim had his hand up.
Okay, Tim, you had a comment?
I just was gonna say, we could save a lot of expenses if Becky just did since the town owns it and there's no use for it, and it was taken in tax title, why don't we just auction the thing and be done with it?
There's an expense to all that too, Tim. There's not much value in it, so that's a lot of work for the treasurer, and and we're gonna have to pay to auction it.
Well, I guess I'm asking is what's the difference in cost? Maybe that's a better question.
And if I may, I don't know how the tax title process works, but I know generally Becky waits to get a few different properties together to kind of make it a worthwhile, and not that all those properties are sold together, but just that they're all auctioned on the same day. They can go to different bidders or whatever. So would it be worthwhile considering adding this, I don't know, again, to that auction, the next auction, that there's a decent amount of
The property.
parcels to go forward? I don't know what that cost would be to add it into auction that's already going to happen versus a standalone auction.
I thought this bit came up when we had all those lots, and that if we sold them separately, it would be expensive, because she would have to charge for each lot
Deeds
separately.
and everything.
Right, so there is going to be expense in.
Right,
in
but I
individual
have
expense
no, I mean, I'm just trying to think, like I said, I also would kind of like to see, on the flip side, more input from planning and or RDIC before just, you know, I feel bad for the property owner in that we have someone that is interested in the property and there's no way forward for, not specifically for him, but just in general. But I don't know how to make it feasible for the town or the property owner.
Maybe I'd have to check with the treasurer collector to see how that would work and what that expense would be in a tax sale. I don't know, but that doesn't alleviate your concern about RDIC
Right,
or anything else.
right.
Right, because I mean, it would just have to go to a general auction, and people have to go bid on it at that process, so. So that doesn't answer the request for the abutter to purchase the land, because that still would leave it at the mercy of an auction if that was the process that was taking place.
Right.
Could, how big is it?
40 by 41.
And what do you think what's it assessed at?
$2,000 or something, wasn't it? I can't even remember. Is it in there?
Let me see.
It's very low.
I have a good GIS.
I only ask because what I think we should do, do you mind if I talk to the
Sure.
administrator? There's some provisions in 30B for really things that aren't worth a lot, that may be able to avoid the RFP process. I would just suggest we review those and get back to them.
I'm not aware of that for land sales, but we could look.
But yeah, disposition of property below 35,000.
Okay.
You might be able to avoid the RFP process and update the assessment, but it's an option.
So we can take a look. Truthfully, I don't know, Joe, on that, but we could check. But I think that we still got that RDIC and road.
Yeah, no, but I would,
But maybe that could be a potential there to look at, see if there's something like that.
See, I don't see where IDIC property even touches this thing.
Well, if you look
You're
at,
talking about
Carol had a map that showed how it,
Yeah, but this map here says
but we own the land.
Robert Love on one side of it, and it says Mosio on the other side. And
Do you have that map that shows the connection to? And what would-
So just, this is his property that he has currently.
Yes.
We
Want
own
me to
this
read it
and we
out?
own
No,
this,
just read it.
which we then effectively,
Oh, so we own both ends of the T.
Christmas Tree and Rutland owns both ends.
That's 30B.
yeah, but the people adjoining it, according to this map,
And they also rely on the income
This is-
assessment.
who's the landowner?
Mosio, this is the
Yeah,
land.
Mosio, and
Log.
the Veterans is up on this end of it, which is Rutland Heights.
But Christmas,
So this-
the parcel's like right up here, I think. So it's behind Mosey, like up the height side.
Outside.
If you were going back towards Central Tree,
Yeah.
is where that property is.
I'm looking.
I just,
And the assessed value was $100?
That's what it looks
The assessed
like. I
value
mean,
was
that's-
$100.
Tiny
so
piece
it's
of property,
really
there's no
good,
real value. That's,
It's just a lot of work for such a small return, unfortunately. We gotta look at the best
yeah.
use of the property for the
If you
town.
look at the law, there might be a scapegoat. I think you ought to spend a little bit of time looking at that law. It looks like there might be a
What's
scapegoat.
Joe's suggestion?
Yeah, looks like there's a scapegoat in there that might be very easy, so, where you can determine it based upon an assessment. So I think you should look into that and then get back to,
the only thing.
But
well,
what,
just to say no.
so if there's a scapegoat, what does it give it the right to give it to one individual as opposed to another?
Well, 30B is based solely on, it still has to be advertised, but 30B is based solely on values, so 10,000, 50,000, and on. So, and then it covers both purchase and disposal of real, goods and real property. So if you want to surplus trucks, we have to follow the same laws.
Right, so you still need to go through the expense of the
because it's-
process.
Because
Right.
it's not worth a lot, you don't have to necessarily go through the RFP process, because you're not gonna get up around 50,000. So they're, all
But
I'm
you don't have
suggesting,
to survey it or anything, and you don't have to, but you still have to list it publicly.
I don't wanna go into all the depth of 30B right now. All I'm suggesting is review it and get back to the gentleman at the next meeting if you could.
Or even ahead of time, over the phone.
The question still becomes, even if you could do it, with Joe's suggestion, it'd almost be like a request for quotes. You can put it out there publicly in some kind of advertisement and say, are you interested to purchase? The only one that would do that would be him, because he's the only one that benefits that piece of property. So the value could be whatever he decides it wants to be, because there's no comparison to do it with, right? Of course, it's not worth a lot, so it's not a big deal in terms of what that valuation is. The question still comes to, does the town want to sell it? Does it think it might have any future use for it? Is it have access to it? I don't know the answer to those kind of questions.
Well,
That's a decision.
I don't know how the board, I would like to explore possible options under the 30B procurement, and also just do a quick feedback from RDIC and or planning to see if, I don't know anything about that area, and so I would rather have feedback from that. And then, I think we've had a lot of residents come before us that have wanted an empty parcel next to them that they don't end up having an opportunity to. So I think it's something that the town needs to be mindful of, because if it's...
You're correct, Leah, that, we recently turned down those residents who wanted to buy the property, but that was, of course, was large enough for 30B requirements, but we did say to a bunch of residents we wouldn't allow them to buy individual properties next to theirs to benefit their property for...
Well, that's because we would have to foreclose on them individually.
Yeah, that was a whole different, it's a much more complicated issue, but I don't remember, truthfully, in my career, I don't remember ever having the situation where an owner nearby, although sometimes when towns own small piece of property, I've seen towns where they sell off these little pieces of property that are town-owned property to people that are nearby, just because then it puts it back on the books for assessment. So now it's part of his property, you can tax it.
That's what I was
So those single little
leaning
pieces,
towards.
it's been done.
If there's people that want to buy an empty lot that's next to their property to enhance their property value, the town's getting some money for the purchase price, and then you assume that their individual assessment is increasing, which would benefit the town to a slight degree. I mean, it's land, it's not going to add a whole host of value, but it's something that gets it back in the tax rolls, as well as recovering some cost as well. So I personally wouldn't want to say absolutely no. I would like to spend a little bit more time, especially since I just saw it tonight, and explore the 30B options. Like I said, maybe a quick email to planning or RDIC. I think maybe Dick might have.
There's pretty wet land there.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So you're not going to build a road to go to.
You need the bridge or something, right? The great.
Yeah.
So Conservation already reviewed it.
Yes, we did review it. We've already been through it.
Lyndon, I don't know.
Chairman Dick Williams
If
has
you
his
want to
hand
make
raised.
some kind of a motion just to
Mr. Chairman?
postpone any decision.
Mr. Williams has his hand raised.
Yes.
Are there any easements on this?
Well,
We don't
that's
know.
one of the things that was brought up. We don't know yet. So we're not taking.
Water and sewer easements, you mean?
Or drainage, electrical, or anything?
Not that we found in conservation.
Okay.
And I did ask, and Joe didn't think so either, I think, right? Joe, you kind of shook your head no, I think, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, do we need a motion if we're just going to hold it and continue
I
investigating?
take no action at this until.
Make a motion to take no action at this time.
Okay. So the board's fine with that.
Yep.
Okay.
And with that, we'll take some more look at it, and then we'll discuss with DPW and stuff. We'll see.
Sure.
We'll take a little more look.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
No,
I'll second it.
Do we have to make a formal motion?
Well, that's what I was wondering,
I don't think so. He just,
No,
all
I
he
didn't
did
think
was
we
to
did.
take, just delaying it and reconsidering it later, so I don't think we had to do a formal
They
tonight.
have to.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think one of the Trails Committee guys is on there, just let them know that he was appointed.
Okay.
Joe Kane, I'm not sure if you can hear us. We already did the appointments, and we appointed both you and Peter.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Sorry, we were ahead of schedule. I had told them maybe 6:30. So,
Oh, okay.
thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so to me, that was just, we're just gonna postpone it, so I don't think we need anything. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is discussions on Wachusett Road. I know we've been a lot of information that's been sent out to everybody.
Sure, you want me to start with the basics?
Yeah, if you want to just, okay, go ahead.
So thank you. First, Mr. Chairman, as you know, we received a letter of intent for someone to take out, specifically Mr. William E., hopefully I say this right, is it Tolley? Zotley. We got a request to take it out of 61A, and the request was based upon doing some future development of...
We're only talking about the road. We're not talking about 61A.
Oh, that's the first part of this special, I'm sorry, you're doing the 61A.
We're not talking
All right,
about
yep,
61A.
I apologize.
Just
So,
the public
all
way.
right, let me switch gears, I apologize for that, because it's two different issues, but same area. So the road, essentially, the question of is this a town road, we answered that question at the last meeting. We had the attorney very clearly give us the answer that this is in fact a town road. I actually went there today and walked part of the road with the DPW director. I wanted to see the physical issues with this road. It is temporarily closed off. It is passable in terms of you could drive a vehicle down it. It's partial gravel. It's very muddy, but I guess it's not much worse than some of our other gravel roads as I look at it. At least the part that we could look at. We also came in from the Princeton side to look at that as well. That seems to be a small stream right now coming through it, and I'm not sure how passable that is. But a lot of basic cleanup work has been done to that property. We had provided you with a whole list of documents, and from the town attorney's opinion, we've had numerous discussions with our town clerk, who agrees that it's a town road. I reviewed the Board of Selectmen meeting that was on, I guess it was YouTube or public access, to review what was discussed. Clearly, that discussion, it was made clear to everybody that the DPW director in fact did have to make that road passable, and the board at the time did agree that that was the plan going forward with it.
Where did you get that?
It was a televised.
Well, no, I know, but you have the minutes, and I watched the television. So
You watched it too?
Yeah.
Oh, I watched it, and I saw the chairman specifically say that it should be brought up to basic.
In discussion, that was his thought.
No, it's his
Right.
discussion.
So there was no
But-
action.
No, there was no vote. Let's be really clear about that. There was no vote taken. The board members asked a whole host of different questions. And it seemed to me the impression was left that the DPW director was the professional that handled the situation, that he should move forward. He explained numerous times of things that he felt had to be done, including when asked the question of plowing in the road in the winter, that would have to be done. And then basically, my read of the whole meeting kind of said, DPW director, you're the professional, move forward, work with the town attorney, and move forward in the direction that you think you need to go. And that's sort of my understanding of it. The DPW director is here to answer any additional questions.
But that's not what the minutes say. I mean, the minutes were left at about this, talking to council about it, and about the survey, and at the expense of the owner, and then we would have to come back to the board for a plan.
Well,
About what actions need to be taken. That was all, that was my understanding. The other thing I have a concern with is the town council's opinion wasn't provided to the board. That was provided, we didn't get that for the discussion, so until now, we never really had exactly what town council had said regarding the property.
so I don't want to, listen, I wasn't at that meeting. I can only tell you what I thought I saw when I watched it. But I was not at the meeting that this occurred. I watched the video of it. Again, there was no vote, so I think the DPW director was in quandary about it. In the beginning of the meeting, as it relates to the survey of the road and the cost of that, it first started in a conversation and said that if we can charge the residents for the survey, and then later at the end of the meeting, it just kind of got assumed that the cost would be charged to the residents. In fact, as the DPW director, and talking to him, and frankly, just my own knowledge of it, you can't charge residents to do a survey for a town road. That's just not legal or viable. It's a town road. The town would have to pay for the survey. Although I think the board was left that was a potential option that we could charge residents, and that was, I think, very unclear after watching the recording about that, but the chair is right in that it was discussed about that, but again, my read of that, of the meeting seemed to be, DPW director, you work with the town council and work that out, and that was kind of left to his discretion to work it out. That's my interpretation. You obviously see it differently than I did, but that was the way I read it, or listened to it.
And like I said, part of my concern is, number one, that we should have seen what the town council said, because there's lots of other information in here as far as which would have been, the board would have been able to make a more of an informed decision regarding the road, reading some of the comments from town council.
And the council, truthfully, Mr. Chairman, when I read that, and I wasn't here when that report was done, so I read it like you well after it was done. But I found the town council, the legal opinion, very confusing and hard to understand, to be honest with you.
Well, it opened up options, I think, that we could have discussed as a board as to what we would want to do with this road.
Well, it kind of went in my opinion, it went in two directions, right? So it first started saying that if it's a town road, you have to bring it up to passable conditions. And then it kind of put some things on it that said, well, if it's not used by the public in any way, maybe you don't have to. And it was really frustrating to me to read that. So I actually got on the phone with the town council and asked her to clarify that position myself and DPW director, at which time she said to me clearly that she believes that it's a town road and we have to make it passable. But that legal opinion, I think it makes it hard to decipher really clearly either way what should have been done in terms of that road.
I mean, there's a lot of things that, like I said, in the council's opinion. The other concern that I had brought up at the last time is the limited resources, both materials and staffing time. And regardless of this, this was not a priority project in my mind, nor was there clear direction that this would be a priority project to going forward. Lee, do you have some questions?
I was going to say, having read the full opinion of the town council, it seems like the town could very easily say that it's essentially an unmaintained town road and declare it as such and not have to continue to do stuff, because it hasn't, I've lived in town 12 years and it's never been used for vehicle purpose. So I was under the impression that we would, I think even in the town council, it says that the cost of some things could be put on the landowner to determine things. I'm looking for the exact wordage.
Both betterments and all
yes.
expenses towards it.
But my impression, having left that meeting, was that we kind of as a board agreed, although there was no vote, to consider pursuing the survey, especially if the cost. I had asked, I think, how much a survey would cost. It was ballpark $7 to $10 grand. That then we could consider pursuing that if the cost could be passed on to the landowner. Survey the road and then come back to the board to have a plan, because I walked the road a couple weeks ago and it's quite narrow, and I fear, I'm no expert, so Joe, you can probably there's already one culvert that has been needed to put in. My guess is there would need to be at least probably at least 2, if not more, culverts underneath going from one side to the other. When I walked, it was before the last big snowstorm, and it was like rivers on both sides. So it's already very narrow. In fact, at one point down closer to the Princeton side, it looked like the stake was almost in what I would consider to be the roadway. So my concern is that it's essentially a cart path at this point, and the width of it is barely passable with no snow or anything. And we already have problems maintaining our well-established, fairly flat gravel roads, and this one has a decent amount of grade coming up out of there. And I think I was expecting it to come back before the board before moving forward, just as a plan to say, hey, it's been marked if anybody wants to go walk or whatever. So that's, I think, where my frustration is.
I mean, I feel that the board was pretty much told it is a town road and we have to fix it. And reading this opinion, I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, there was a reason back in '87 or whatever that the town was looking at abandoning the road back then, and I don't see that I mean, there was trees in the middle of the road. It's far from been maintained. I'm sure you haven't been plowing it, and if it's a town road, you're not supposed to plow any private roads before you do all the town roads, so if you consider it a town road, then you'd have to be plowing it.
Are you asking me a question?
I'm just stating that if it's, I don't consider it as having been maintained as a town road, or considered a town road, because it's been abandoned since '87 when they were considering abandoning it. So like I said, I don't think we were given the correct impression at this meeting. I think we were told we had to do it. I don't agree with town council saying just make it passable, because once you start it and open up that road, you gotta bring it to the same standards as any other town road. You can't just make it passable if it's a town road and you're opening it up to access. So I think you have more of an obligation once we open up a road that has been abandoned for many, many years. The other thing, like I said, it certainly never seemed to be a priority that we would be putting a lot of resources and time into it prior to looking further into it. And those were my concerns when it was brought to my attention. A lot of, like, residents complaining that, resources are being put onto this vacant road and things aren't getting done in town in other areas.
So just let me be clear, because I wasn't here for this discussion. I'm here trying to respond from what I've learned. So I don't really have a horse in if this is a road or not a road. I can only tell you that according to our town clerk, according to our attorney, working with DPW director, it's a town road. The fact that nobody's used it doesn't change its status as a town road, even though it was abandoned in terms of use. It's a town road. Now, on that basis, my understanding, the planning commission did an A&R, giving them frontage, to build there, because it has that frontage as a quote town road, right? So that's what the planning commission determined. You are absolutely correct that the town has not maintained it in a road in any real way. And then I don't know how many of you watched the video. It sounds like the chairs watched the video of that meeting. And I can understand why the DPW director felt that, after that discussion, that he needed to bring the road up to make it passable from as a result of that discussion.
Yeah, make
It would
it
be
passable.
to make it passable.
Not up to,
Nobody, I don't think anyone is suggesting make it, a town road, but to put down some gravel, get rid of the trees, just make it passable. That was what was left, and I think that
Well, that was
what he wants to do.
a possible plan going forward after the surveys and other things were done at that expense, not to move forward with the project.
And my question would have been, we have the survey done, what's it gonna cost to get it even passable? Because I think it's a lot, in my mind, it's a lot more than what I was envisioning. It's not just throwing down some gravel. I mean, it's gonna take, like I said, culverts and mindfulness as far as the wetness and everything.
And that,
So,
truthfully, I think that's a better question.
And I
The
think
DPW
based on
director just don't know
town
the
council's
answer.
opinions, I think one of the options would have been that we could have said, well, we're gonna consider abandoning this road.
Well, we could
because-
still, to this day, consider
Well, because of the
abandoning road, right?
expense, it doesn't, we're talking about the current gravel roads that we have, we can't maintain.
Mhm.
We're opening up one that's been abandoned since 1987 and putting a lot of money and resources in a road that has no houses on it.
Tim, if I may, Tim also was waiting when we're done.
I do have, sorry Tim, this is Carol, I'm gonna jump in for a second. My understanding is this road also opens up into Princeton, and the Princeton side is not is no better than our side.
oh, no, that's not right.
Is it not right?
It's
That's
paved.
not right. That's
It's paved, okay, then I got,
Oh,
then
I
I
just
did
saw
not
that,
have correct
I
information.
just read it today, and it's paved up until when you get to where the road kind of starts, where it's closed off. And there was like a stream coming down it, but I mean, it was, I don't know how much you'd have to do
From
some,
the Rutland side.
well, maybe you'd have to do some kind of thing to
So
get
is
the
it
water
paved
off the
up to the
road,
lines?
Yeah.
there's water coming down that road, and that's I think a result of the snow and ice.
And do they have houses on that road?
Oh, yeah.
Not many, but a few, right? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
There's 1, 2, 3, there's at least five or
Yeah.
six houses on that road.
Yep.
And clearly with the A&R that went through, if those houses were built, the town would have to do some more work to make that road more passable.
I always watched that every year anyway. When I was growing up a kid, I used to drive that
This specifically says we do not
road.
need to do
Right.
it
Yeah,
for subdivision.
you can make it passable.
It specifically
Not too
says
hard,
we
I
do
don't
not
think.
need to do it to improve it for subdivision.
I'm
Well,
sorry?
sub-
Me
It
too.
specifically
We both
says
used
we
it.
do not need to do anything to do subdivision.
Right, it did say that.
No, he doesn't have to bring up the subdivision requirements, no.
Just make
No.
it passable.
Just make it passable.
But I still, sorry Tim, I know, I still have questions as to, I got some documentation from Joe as to estimated cost as far as what the work that's already been done is, and that's, what, Joe, maybe a quarter of the roadway that's been done, and that's the top of the hill, that's not even the wettest part. So my questions are, what's it gonna cost to continue doing that, as well as the sustainability to maintain it. When I look at, like I just said, when I look at the existing, let's take Britnell, which is relatively flat, not the grade that road has, and we're having trouble keeping that going, especially through the freeze stalls and everything. So, sorry, Joe,
He's the right guy to answer the question, so.
Can I ask a couple questions? I think if you go back, has everyone watched the video from the previous meeting? The attorney's decision was made available in advance of that meeting. We got it that day. It was just an email. I sent it on to the acting TA at the time. So the decision goes back that far. I'd like to know, at that time, what decision could the board make? The board doesn't have the authority to determine whether the road is public or not. Do they?
I think
I don't think you do.
I think we,
Well, we
knew
would
it.
have a right to consider abandoning it and not being a
No,
public
that's gotta go
road.
for a town meeting.
Right,
We
no,
can't.
but we had the ability to put it on town meeting. to
But that would
abandon
mean
the
you'd
road
have
at
to
the
already
expense.
accept that it's an existing town road.
but I think
Is it certified though?
maybe we can ask additional legal, I know you guys have had back and forth, because I've read a lot of MGL and trying to piece it together, and it seems very clear that there are situations that the select board, the commissioners of the road, can declare roads discontinued. I think abandonment might need to go before town meeting, but discontinued and or unmaintained, and have them posted. I think Princeton did something similar on the backside of Lover's Lane, going up towards
Old Mill.
Old
Yeah.
Mill and Overlook, I think.
Mhm.
So I think that there is precedent for that we can look at. It's a whole lot of legalese that I get lost in, and I don't know how having back and forth by email with the attorney is beneficial, because I feel like a lot of the questions could be a little bit better so I've been trying to formulate my questions cohesively to send along to the administrator to then be passed along, just as far as the potential process, the pros, cons, what happens if A, B, C happens, what happens if D, E, F happens, whatever. So
Right, and like I said, I mean, my concern is that we don't have the resource, we don't have the time, we don't have the materials. You said during your budget review that we have really low on gravel and that we have a very short supply of gravel, is that correct?
What I said regarding gravel roads and our supply of gravel, I was referring to the operation and maintenance account or the tax-supported O&M account for gravel roads.
Mhm.
We have about enough gravel to do a couple hundred feet annually. We have 10 miles of gravel roads.
Right.
But I don't think that's a good argument for this particular road, because the town hasn't done the best job of maintaining their gravel roads 10, 12 years. We just applied for Chapter 90 money and got it to start restoring some of the gravel on the gravel roads. So our maintenance of gravel roads is a historical problem over and above.
I
this
agree,
particular.
and that's why do we want to put all these resources and bring another one on to maintain if we're not maintaining the current ones that are actively carrying buses and traffic and have residents on it? It's prioritizing, in my opinion.
I can only say, my conversation with the attorney is, I, like you, Mr. Chairman and Vice Chairman, are very confused by that legal opinion. So I asked her directly, do we have to maintain this road and make it passable? And the answer was yes. Now, if you'd like, I can have her scope in or zoom in and answer the direct question. But that was kind of where it was left to me, because you're right, there's a lot of technical stuff back and forth on this. But at the end of the day, my big question was, do we have to make it passable or not? And the attorney gave me a clear, direct answer that the answer is yes.
and
So, I mean, I'm happy to bring the attorney in, but
You know,
But
I'd
that's
almost
kinda
say
where I
if we
was
could
at.
get Dave to come in, because it was Dave was the one that wrote this email. So now you're asking another attorney to interpret, which it should be all the same, but apparently there's a disconnect there.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
This
Dave gave
email
the
is
opinion.
from Dave Jenkins.
Jenkins, right?
And
The original
you've
attorney
gotten-
is from Sharon, isn't it?
This is from Dave.
No, it's from Dave.
All
David
of this
did the
highlighted
original.
is from Dave, and so the other attorney's being asked to interpret another attorney's, and like I said, they should be on the same page, but it appears that they are not.
They work together, but I was under the impression that it was both David The original attorney was from Sharon, I thought.
Sharon's the.
Sharon did both. She's the one we talked to, and she
Yes.
did the original opinion, right?
Yes.
Why do you think it's Dave Jenkins? Can I see what you're talking about? Because
All right, so
I'm
maybe,
pretty
I'm
sure
sorry,
the
excuse
opinion
me,
was
maybe
Sharon.
it's-
I thought,
it came from Sharon, the original
I thought
opinion.
David
Joe
too.
copying Dave, but I don't see who it's from.
Yeah, it was from Sharon.
Okay, it's
Sharon.
I apologize.
Yeah, I got me confused there for a minute, because I
Yeah,
thought
I saw his
Doesn't,
name.
isn't he more of a
It's-
labor person?
David Jenkins does labor, but
But
he
they
does
love each
general.
other.
Sharon's the land use expert.
The
Yeah.
other thing is I've been on the mass.gov website a lot,
What
and
was David's
on
name?
there's a whole section, Massachusetts law, about roads and streets, and the first link on there is Best Bet, and that takes us to a whole document, a 78-page document entitled Massachusetts Streets and Ways for Surveyors, and it references a whole lot of legal opinions and court decisions and everything. And this is what I've been kind of going through fairly recently, but there's a whole section on I mean, it's pages of discontinuance of roads and how that happens, and I can send the document around and point, discontinuance of roads and ways, the statutory and then the legal opinions and what the town may or may not be responsible for, as far as from the developer side as well as from individuals, the public, or whatever. So I think I was under the impression that, we kind of were like, okay, go ahead and have it surveyed and then come back and we'll have some more time. I think that this letter had come in the afternoon of our meeting, and we may have had access to it, but it was like that afternoon right before our meeting. Most of us are not spending, I mean, some of us spend the time right before the meeting doing it, but I think a lot of us are trying to spend the weekend to get caught up on everything. So I think,
Are you talking about the email from the attorney?
Yeah.
Was that was included?
It may have been in the Google Drive. I'm not sure, because that was when we were still all via Zoom.
Tim has to say, I know Peter wants to say something, and then I suggest that we just let go of the past and see what we're doing moving forward.
Peter, you have a comment?
Well, the A&R is
Oh, I'm
complete.
sorry, I forgot Tim. He's
That-
been
that's
sitting
okay.
there
Go.
with his hand up for an
That's right.
hour.
Tim's been there, we'll let him go
Karen
first.
said, oh no, forget Tim. I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, my frustration is that, if I'm not mistaken, that letter from the attorney was in the October timeframe of 2021, is that correct?
September, I think.
September. So, and I remember I was either at the meeting or on the Zoom meeting, or in the Zoom meeting, and I do not remember that second paragraph even being discussed or talked about, which gives options for the select board to do anything. Therefore, if that was discussed, and there would have been options of, to Leah's point, maybe abandoning, doing something to the road, that could have went to town meeting, and then when we got to the A&R section, the planning board would have had more options of saying, this is a closed road, this is an A&R road. We need a legal opinion about what we can do since this isn't a quote an open town road anymore. So there's a domino effect here that I'm really struggling with, and I feel like the wool's been pulled over my eyes, and that's where I'm a little frustrated right now with this whole process.
Right.
So that's my opinion, and I apologize if I sound abrupt, but I'm really frustrated, not only as a planning board member, but as a citizen, that it seemed like this was all tainted to have the developer to be able to eventually A&R and build these lots. And there's many other roads based upon the Stantec report that need attention other than this road. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
I'll let Peter, I have a couple other questions.
Peter, you want to go ahead?
Well, irrespective of how we got here, we have an approved A&R that has frontage, I don't know how many lots, on whatever we're going to call that road that is owned by, that is a public road. My fear, if the town takes an action to abandon or not maintain, that we open the town to legal action by anyone who purchases a lot on that road with the expectation to have access to his property from that road.
So, if I may, sorry. I've been reading all of this, and I think the Princeton case in particular has a similar kind of process that I think they had approved A&R lots and then discontinued the road. I'm not 100% sure of the timeline. I'm trying to get more information for that, just for
No.
reference.
You're talking Princeton?
The Lover's Lane side,
Yeah,
and
no,
that wasn't,
no. They cut, if you went down there, you'll see where they abandoned, and where they abandoned it, the city of Worcester put a gate in.
no.
They
I'm
didn't
talk-
abandon it,
No,
they
no, no, no.
discontinued.
No. I'm talking about not the old Brook Station Road.
I'm talking Lover's Lane.
Oh, the other side, like that goes up, would eventually go up behind over, like Heifer and Overlook, that side. That's what I'm talking about. Is that what you're talking about?
There are 4 lots just before the town line.
Okay, but that's, all right, I haven't been over that other end of Lover's Lane that comes out on the Ball Hill.
Right. But my other question is, reading the document that I'll send around about the streets and ways, there's a whole lot of legal opinion as far as what towns, how courts have decided in different cases. And I, again, am not I have no legal background, but a lot of it is not necessarily just a default that the town is on the hook for everything. There is a lot of questions that could be answered, and I don't have the legal background to do that. So I will send that document around. I don't want to necessarily just have the threat of legal be thrown at us and then not pursue it because of that, when it's potentially a big cost to the town on the legal side also to continue working a road that is going to be a huge investment to keep up and maintain and everything. So I see it on both sides.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to, any questions the board give it to the attorney. I'm starting to think, though, that it's better that we have the attorney come and answer your questions directly. Once that list is done, I can prepare it, give it to them, and then we can have a part of it where the attorney can answer questions. I mean,
Like I said, I mean, my concern is that that we don't have the resources to do the project, and that is my main concern, is that we're very limited in what we can do. So-
You know, do you mind if I speak just briefly through the chair? The Stantec report that was mentioned by the gentleman from planning, in that report, they said the town should be spending close to $1 million a year on all its existing roads. We currently get roughly $350,000 in Chapter 90 money, and that goes to a bunch of O&M things that it probably shouldn't. There's very little tax dollars going to maintain roads as it is.
Right,
My
that's
only-
my concern.
Well, Mike, that's a great concern to have, but I think that concern, or this board has to look to get that concern to deal with the other roads. You're so far behind the 8 ball as it is. I think it's great to hear. It's fabulous to hear that. And it's great that you want to put resources towards more roads here in town, but
No, I think we want to direct resources we have to the roads that are active as opposed to a road that's been abandoned for 7
no,
years.
I understand that. And
So, I mean, you're just building the case for the reason why I have a concern is because we don't have enough to maintain the roads that we currently people are driving.
And I'm just asking that this group, either now or in the future, take that mission on and help us improve the existing roads that people drive on every day. Regarding this road, the only thing I wanted to say was, we came to this conclusion early on. We got an expert in right-of-way law. Sharon is one of the best people in the Commonwealth. She went through the documents and she's the one who said that, yeah, it's a road. But you're welcome to talk to her. We did, the first thing we did was contact an
The
attorney.
concern is whether it was a priority to work on that road, or if there were other options
It's not
that
a
the board
question
could have
necessarily
considered.
of, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Excuse me? Because, yes it is, because if we didn't have materials and manpower to do some of the other things in town for active roads, I don't think going to an abandoned road would be a priority.
Here's the problem. According to the attorney, if it is a town road, there are some basic standards you have to bring it to, so that in a practical manner, so that people don't get hurt. That's state law. I can't get around that.
Yeah, I think we could have the right to close it off until it could be repaired. I don't know that there are options that I don't think were considered. If you're looking at what the council sent, there were different things that were in there that did not make it clear
No, and
that we were obligated to do that. And I don't think it was clear at the end of our meeting when you were gonna do a survey that we were gonna go forward with it until the board discussed it.
That would be, well, my only concern with that is it would be atypical for the board to discuss work we do on existing town roads.
It was-
Once it was determined it was an existing town road, again, it would be atypical.
The
for us to-
agreement at the meeting was that you would talk to town council, pursue looking at a survey, and then develop a plan that the board would have to review, is what it was decided.
I didn't get the same measure from the meeting.
It says it in the minutes.
But I don't think the minutes do a good job of portraying the meeting. I went back and looked at the whole tape for the meeting, and I came away from it with different instruction.
And
But
like
again-
Leah had said, what the board understood was it would be at the expense of them. So if it wasn't gonna be at the expense of the owner, before we went and used town funds, we should have got clarification, because the board went on that premise going forward. I don't know. Like I said, I don't feel that we have the resources to put into an abandoned road. And it says abandoned all the way through it, and it has not been an active road. It had trees in it, in the middle of it. So I don't think that opening up an abandoned road, whether it was accepted as a public road or not, would be a priority. And I think that we, as a board, would have had some options that weren't clear at the time. So. And does anybody else have any comments, or how we want to go forward with?
I don't know if Tim still had a question or not, but I would like to not continue work on it and give us time to form, like I said, I still have a whole lot of questions that maybe we can reach out to the attorney and figure out if there's a plan that the board agrees on or doesn't agree on. And having had more time, like I said, I went back and I think this letter, the legal opinion, may have been in the Google Drive. It would have been put in, we never got an email about it saying that it was there though. So we only would have seen it, the board only would have seen it at the meeting. We wouldn't have had time to review it or anything. So, like, I searched my emails. We didn't have any email with this as an attachment. So, or as a forward. So, it was in the Google Drive, I looked, but we didn't have time, I didn't have time to preview it before the meeting, which I would have liked to have done. I was going through it as the meeting was happening, trying and having obviously the highlights of it pulled out and talked about, and not the whole entire thing. So that's why I felt comfortable with it potentially moving forward with the plan to have it surveyed at the expense of the owners and then brought back.
But we can't do that legally. We have no way to go and assess the owners. Having said that, I mean, once we knew that, we had to, it is what it is.
Right, but it was never even brought back that when I left that meeting, I was under the impression that it was going to be at the expense, it would be surveyed at the expense of the landowners. And it was never brought back before the board, hey, it's not going to be at the expense of the landowner, we're on the hook for it, because that may have been another conversation. I don't know how the board at the time would have, I think we need to look forward, and I would like to just pause for right now. It's still snowing. I mean, it's still, not pause indefinitely, but pause for another couple weeks or a month until we can figure out additional options and continue to go through everything, if the board is amenable to that.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a problem with the pause. I think the board should make a motion to pause it or do whatever you want to do. I guess I would be looking for what you want me to do next. I mean, I spent a great deal of time talking to the attorney. If you want to talk to the attorney, give me some direction as to what you want me to do next, because we've done what we think you asked for in terms of talking to the attorney, getting the advice. And at this point, I need to know, what do you want us to do next? I guess is where I'm looking for it.
Well, I know that Leah said that she's started to formulate some questions, and I think the question would be, what is the board's option? Because I think the only one that was highlighted was that it was a town road, and then we had to make it passable. I have a concern making it passable is really the right thing, because once you make it passable, it's an open road, and you can't just make it passable. Then you're liable for anybody who goes off the road or whatever
I
if it
think
doesn't
it-
meet standards.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's just, actually, I think it's kind of the opposite, the way I understand it, right? So the purpose of making it passable is to reduce the liability of somebody getting hurt on the road if they do something, going through and they damage their car, they damaging what is considered a public road. So the liability, the way it was kind of explained to me, is that the purpose for making it clear and passable is so that it limits the liability to the town. That was the way it was explained to me. And that's the passable words was right out of state statute, I think. Isn't that what it was? It was actually language in state statute that the town was responsible for making it passable because it's, quote, a town road. It is not, just to be very, very clear, even though in theory you're right, we've abandoned it, the specific term abandoned road is, as you say, it's gotta go to town meeting to be formally abandoned. And for some reason, and I don't know why, it actually made it to a town meeting warrant and then they didn't take any action on it. But there was there were people that wanted to abandon it, which would have taken away this whole conversation if they had did it at that time. The fact that it wasn't formally abandoned at town meeting almost confirms the fact that it's a town road, because they didn't do the.
You want me to dish you up a piece of lasagna?
Yeah, we'll take lasagna.
Hey, I made lasagna.
But that's the problem, as the attorney suggested to us, the fact that it got onto a warrant made it clear it was a town road. And the fact
Well,
that
I
we
mean, I
didn't-
agree with Lee. I mean, I think my concern is like resources. That's my
Right.
main concern.
Right.
Not
I think-
not necessarily the road itself, but what was the best way of going forward and use of our resources.
So can I make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman? So I would suggest that, we postpone the decision for a period of time. I mean, we can't keep it closed forever. We have to make a decision at some point. But if we make it, again, I still need to know if you just make a motion and say, okay, we're gonna keep it closed for another 2 months, we're not gonna let Joe do any work on it, we could still, I think, give us time in the summer to do it if it comes to that. But then there's gotta be a set time, and then the question is, do you want to ask further questions of the attorney? What, you want to present me with questions asked the attorney and get them in written answer? How do you want to go forward?
Well, one of the concerns, like I said, Leah said that they've only gone so far. What is gonna be the total cost to do that? to the
Depends
road?
upon how many questions we ask the attorney. Or
No,
No,
I
the
think for the
cost
land,
to-
or
to
for the
what's the
road.
cost? What's the
To make
cost,
it
Joe, to make it
passable.
passable the rest of the way? You started it, how much more do you think it's gonna cost to make it passable right now for the work you did plus what you'd have left to go through it?
We're only using town staff on the road currently at this time, so the
That-
only
That's
cost we
still
have.
part of our cost
Yeah,
because
what's
that's staff
But
out.
I agree with you, but
Right.
I'm not putting a cost on that, I'm just gonna give you a material cost, is what I was trying to imply, if that's all right. So material-wise, probably another $20,000, and just gravel.
Just in gravel. So 20 grand plus whatever time our guys take to do it.
About how much time was spent on the portion that's been done so far?
I believe I sent that all into an email to the board already, but I would estimate about 2 weeks' time.
And what about the cost, for I know the one culvert has been put in. I don't know how many additional culverts are expected. What about that additional cost?
We'll probably make that, that's a field decision. It's extra pipe, but it's a nominal cost compared to gravel. All the money's in gravel.
But I also worry. So, I looked at I have right now the cost,
Took chapter 91.
the estimate forms
I
They-
did have a gravel box.
that Joe had sent. I think I don't know that it went to all of us. I'm not sure.
I think it did.
I remember It said processed gravel for Wachusett was $26,718.75 or 75 cents. $26,718.75. And then looking at the process cost for Britnell, it was far less, and Sassawana was about double that. So, and that was just kind of, like I said, I was trying to get an estimate for the amount of distance that's already been done and what that would translate, knowing that bottom part is even more wet than the top, and how that works. So, I personally would rather pause right now, look at, options, plan, whatever the board is, and then have a decision. I think Tim might have.
Yeah, Tim, you had another comment or question?
Yeah, I had a question. And Joe could probably answer. Is, if I remember right, Edith Lane, isn't that the one that the town closes on and off in the winter when the road gets bad because it can't be passable. Am I correct in that assumption?
Emerald, isn't it?
It's emerald.
Emerald?
We don't close,
Okay.
we don't close it off so that it's not passable. Believe it or not, if we leave it open in the wintertime, it gets so torn up, it's too much of an effort to make repairs in the spring. So all we're doing is buying time on making repairs.
Okay. Well, that.
We're trying to
me-
stretch, but if you don't mind if I just could finish, Tim?
Yep, go ahead.
So gravel roads lose a couple inches of gravel every year, and actually the gravel starts to break down and fail and become dust. And we regrade and try and roll those roads annually. So if we left Emerald open all winter, because it doesn't service anything, it gets too torn up and we don't get much use out of our investment. So to stretch it, that's why we close it. I hope that answers your question.
No, Joe, that's sort of a lead-in. If this road for the last 40 years would have been in the same condition, it would have been no different than Emerald. There's no houses on it. There's nothing being done on it, so it would basically been an Emerald type of road. And again, therein lies my struggle. It's really a town that wasn't going to be passable or used for anything until anyhow. Again,
We for the most part, it wasn't too bad. There wasn't a lot of trees in it. There were down trees across it, but not so much in it. And
Okay.
I just want to mention just quick, it came up when it went to the floor in the 1980s. The property owner, who basically owned land on both sides of the road, hired an attorney, and the attorney wrote to the then Selectboard and asked them not to abandon the road to protect his investment at the time. So that's probably why the board took no action, or why there was a vote of no action. And we sent all that information on to the attorney when they reviewed the case. I think that was in at least one packet of stuff I sent.
So I think Leah's suggestion was to just put things on hold until we get more clarification on the board's options.
Yeah, because in reading some, and again, my non-lawyer background, it doesn't necessarily seem that it seems like there's options as far as the legal route for the towns as well as the landowners, and I don't know how they piece out. So assuming the landowner would come back with an additional letter not wanting to move forward, there may be option, it may not necessarily hold up in court or whatever. I don't know, and that's what I would like to investigate the town's responsibilities, cost of everything.
So are we in agreement?
Can I ask one more question, please?
Sure.
I would strongly suggest, if at all possible, we're not doing any work on any gravel roads until stuff dries out. But I would like to see the board stick to, like, either, if at all possible, getting a legal recommendation and then make a decision. Because it's not typical for folks to be involved in construction or reviewing our capital road program that's in its infancy at best, town-wide. So I think if anything, I would suggest you simply stick to getting some better legal information. That's all.
Again, if I could make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman, so I think we got a good month here. Why don't we, what are we in, the first Monday of March? Is that what today is, or second? Yeah, it's the first Monday of March. Why don't we look at the first Monday of April, the first board meeting of April, to reconsider this? In the meantime, the board would, motion that effect, and if the board would give me legal questions they want me to ask the attorney, and then, I think we have the attorney zoom in. We don't have him come here, but we have Sharon zoom in and get to a final decision one way or another where we're going to go with this thing. Does that make sense? So why don't you get a motion until that meeting, and then we'll, again, I'd ask the board to give me any questions and stuff. We'll get it to the attorney, and we'll prepare her to answer any of your questions, and we'll answer those questions answered, and then you guys can decide where to go from that meeting.
Do you want to make a formal
That's a
motion?
reasonable.
Yeah, do you want a formal motion to hold and continue receiving legal option or advice until the first meeting in April? I don't know what that date is.
Yeah, first Monday of April, whatever.
Well,
it
the
is.
first meeting in April.
First meeting in April.
Karen?
It just came to the FinCom this past week that reserve fund transfer had to be made for legal fees for the ZBA, that the town administrator, so who's paying for this legal stuff?
Well, that legal account, because it's question of Board of Selectmen, would come out of our general legal fund, it wouldn't come out of zoning
Okay,
board of appeals.
just wanna make sure.
Although we may
So,
have to come for a transfer
did you
this
get
year for that
Leah's-
too, but.
Did you get Leah's motion to make it?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
And Tamika, just, it looks like it might be April 4th,
April
but just
4th.
double check the dates that I didn't mix up.
I think you're right, so good.
Okay.
If we can, make your questions very concise and detailed so that we don't have the attorney doing hours of work. We want to keep it
Mhm.
very narrowly drawn to what we really want to know, okay?
Right, and maybe just hold off on sending the questions until everybody has.
I'll send it probably the week before that April meeting, I'll send it to the attorney. So you got 3 weeks to kind of work on whatever questions you want to answer.
And do I have a second?
Second,
And roll call?
Clock eye.
Benoit eye.
Waitman, aye.
And Nichols' eye. All right, thank you.
That
Next
was
on
the
the
easy
agenda
discussion.
is agreement between the town of Rutland and tie-in bond for the right-of-way on Palmagussit Road.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, Palmagussit Road is going to be major repair, both with the water line and eventually the roads. And you know there's easements we have to get with various landowners. I'm going to have the DPW director explain from there. But it's a massive amount of work putting all that together, and the DPW director has gotten tie-in bond to work on that project, and he's going to explain that.
We have to comply with state and federal regulations for right-of-way acquisition to be eligible for state and federal funds to do approximately 1 mile road from Main Street to Richards along Palmagussit. There's approximately 90 parcels that include construction easements, temporary easements, and maybe one taking. They all have to be appraised twice, and everything has to be recorded. And the process is pretty detail-oriented. We didn't want to risk losing funding or letting the project slip, so we decided to bring in a professional, and that's what the contract in front of you is for. I can take any questions. Plainly, we don't have the engineering staff or the expertise here in town to take something like that on.
Was the funding for this included in the TIP project proposal? I mean, whether it came out of the TIP or whether it came out of the town's contribution, or is this above and beyond the town contribution?
This would have been the town's contribution, but this is coming out of Chapter 90. The town doesn't have any dedicated funds for this work.
But is this a Chapter 90 money that has already been kind of earmarked for the TIP project, or this is additional chapter?
This is additional.
Okay.
And our concern, we're going to have to use a little bit more for damages. Property values have gone up quite a bit.
Right.
But by means of example, like some of the road abuts town property. For the road project to go through, we still have to go through the assessment process, and that all has to be signed off regardless.
Anybody have any other questions? And if we can get a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign on behalf of the town.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Whitman seconds.
And a roll call?
Clock eye.
Benoit eye.
Whitman, aye.
And Nichols' eye? Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I know that this piece is a lot. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, so.
That contract covers 18 requirements. It's 2 pages of requirements
Yeah.
for every single parcel. They're gonna, it includes 2 full-time engineers, a supervising engineer, and clerical staff for roughly 2 months, just to make sure everything's crossed and dotted so the project goes through.
No, and I think that's an important piece to keep the project going. We have a lot of time and money put into it already, so to lose something on an administrative piece is. I don't know if Tim still wants his hand up, and I don't know if.
Timmy, you have a question, or you just didn't put your hand down yet?
No, this is just for the record. We talked about it. Can we find out how much the contract is? I agree with it. I wholeheartedly have dealt with right-of-ways that Joe needs help on this, but I just was curious to put into the records.
You've got it
What's the
in folder,
contract
too.
value?
Yeah.
7.4 million, I think.
He's talking about just with this contract.
No,
This contract, 130,000.
Thanks.
Paperwork says 140.
Dick?
Just to let you know, I'm on the Transportation and Central Mass Regional Planning, and this was brought up, and I am glad to see that it's going on the way you're doing it right now. So this would be great, and I'll keep pushing it.
Thank you. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Chapter 61A on Campbell Street interest. I know that it's gone through all the boards and there's been no positive response from any boards as far as interest, correct?
Oh, I'll make a motion that the town votes, do I want to vote? We don't want,
No interest?
no interest in these two parcels of property on Campbell Street.
Waive the right of first refusal.
Waive the right of first refusal.
Okay, that sounds good to me. You're great, my dear.
Wants to waive the right of first refusal. And do we have a second?
Whitman seconds.
Any
And
dis-
I just wanted to thank all the boards and commissions that reviewed it and sent back because I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Roll call.
Clock eye.
Benoit eye?
Whitman, aye.
And Nichols' eye. Thank you. Possible 61A 42 Ridge Road appraisal for 2 parcels of land, Ridge Road and Wachusett Road. And we received letters of interest from 3 boards, is that correct? RDIC,
Yes, ag and
Ag, and planning, right?
Yes.
3.
And
Yeah.
I thought Concom talked about it on.
Yeah, but I don't think
We did, but we
they
had,
no
we
interest.
we have no interest.
Right, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I wanted to say that that Concom had no interest.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
so
had no
so there's
interest.
only 3 that have
Yes.
interest, that expressed interest in pursuing, possibly pursuing it. Then, so this is just to, whether the board wants to approve to pay for an appraisal for the property. This is not for the board to express interest or make any other decisions. This is only in response to the interest from the other boards to assess the value of the property. And Ron, you were gonna.
As you know, members of the Board of Selectboard, this is a very complicated issue, and I've provided you tons of documents on this particular property and interest on this. As you know, the letter came in saying they had an attempt to transfer it from 61A. It turns out there was a technical error in the way it was drafted. We sent back a letter to the trustees on this property saying that we're not accepting it because they did not provide the boards and commissions with the actual notices directly from the owner, which was a requirement in this notice. So it did not comply with state statute. That was kind of step 1. But the way that the state law requires us is to, if we're going to move forward with this, that we have to get an appraisal within 30 days of the time the letter of intent comes in. Now that hasn't officially started yet, but we would expect that these trustees are going to resubmit, and that would give us 30 days. So members of the select board have asked me about appraisals, and you saw a whole documentation about the process step by step. The appraisal, as I reached out for appraisals, it ran between $5,500 and $10,000 for what's called a formal certified appraisal. Since then, I've had significant conversations with the consultant/attorney who works with the Agricultural Commission, and the Agricultural Commission asked this consultant to get involved in this particular case. I've had a long conversation about the possibilities with her, and I gave you a memo to that degree explaining to the various possibilities. But tonight, the most important thing in that, in the complicated issue, nothing is simple in this issue, but the complicated question is, it turns out that there's 2 different types of appraisals. There's a certified appraisal, which is a more detailed, more complex, more expensive appraisal that gives you the best accurate number in terms of an appraisal. And then there's another appraisal process that I was unaware of. It's called a restrictive proposal, and again, I've detailed what that sort of means in the documentation. The attorney reached out to another appraisal firm, and you can get one of these restrictive appraisals for like $2,000. Now, a restricted appraisal does not look at all the issues of the land. Usually the appraisers that I've learned, they use what's called the highest and best use of a property when they determine the valuation. This one is a much more limited appraisal. It's obviously cheaper to do because it's restrictive. It only looks at portions of what's going to be done here. The positive of having that kind of restrictive appraisal is that the appraisal probably will come in at a lower price, be valued at a lower price because it's restricted as to what it looks at. So the price will in effect be lower now than a full appraisal. Now that's good and bad. It's good because one is that this appraisal, because it's not as much work, can get done within 30 days, which is a requirement under state statute to be able to give the owner of the property appraisal. I am told from the consultant and from the appraisal company that she's referring to it, that they could do it within 30 days. And the state statute doesn't say what type of proposal what type of appraisal has to be done. It just says appraisal. So it qualifies in terms of the 30 days. Now, why I like it is it does meet the time limits. It allows us to do it. When I asked the appraisal companies to do an appraisal within 30 days, they basically laughed at me. They were like, we're not doing appraisals for like 6 months. We're so backed up. There's no way we would do it within 30 days. The regular full appraisal just requires a lot of work, and they have so much work they wouldn't do it. Again, the good news is that the appraisal number will come in lower price. The negative news in my mind is that the appraisal may not be as accurate. So when we think about purchasing the land, the number we might be using might be lower than what we would actually have to purchase the land for. Now the process allows us to give an appraisal within the 30 days. Then the owner can go out and get an appraisal, would have the time to go out and get an appraisal any way they would want. And one would expect that their appraisal would be significantly higher than our appraisal. And then the third step in that process is the two parties would have to agree to pick a third appraisal company that would be agreed upon by the two parties, and that number would be the number you would generally move forward with. So that's the key of what the appraisal process is we have to discuss. I had suggested to the chair in a meeting we had prior to this is that we should put, close to 10 grand. We'd have to go to the finance committee for a reserve fund transfer. We should put closer to 10 grand because we are going to try to rush somebody to do appraisal, and they said 6 months, and maybe we paid them more than $5,500, $6,000 would cost. Maybe we could get it done faster. That's for the full certified appraisal. We can get this other type of appraisal for 2 grand in the 30 days. So we wouldn't need to budget as much, but again, the appraisal isn't going to be giving us the full kind of information you would normally get from an appraisal. Then after that, again, I don't want to, I know the chair doesn't want to get this issue either, but then the question is, what's our next step? How would we get money to actually purchase the property? That's the next step from here, which I think is a very big question as to whatever the appraisal comes back at, what's the land going to be used for, and how much money, and how are we going to get the money for that? So that, I think, gives us the short version. You have all the detail you can read about the complexities of all this, but that sort of summarizes where we're at today.
And so I don't know if I missed it or not. So did the landowner serve certified letters to all the boards at this point?
No. So right as of today, they didn't send in the new proposals as of yet. The new letter of intent as of yet.
Okay.
But we just I had to send them out a certified letter. On Thursday we sent it out because that was the last day. So we sent out a certified letter to the owner saying that we were rejecting the letter of intent for the technical reasons it didn't meet the state requirement. And as of today, Beth has received no new letter of intent yet. But
And it was not intentionally sent on the last day. That's when we received
That's when we
notification from
finally
town
found out from
council
town
that it had to be
council
done.
that
So I don't want
the
people to
intention
get
was
the
incorrect,
impression that
right.
we waited until the last
No,
day.
we were working with the attorney, and that's when,
Right.
actually it came, I think part of the conversation came from a citizen out there who was looking at this and made comments, and we referred it with the town council and looked at that, the issue that was raised by a citizen, and we looked deeper into the whole process and found that the citizen was correct, and the attorney agreed that we could look at that technical error and say that it was not done correctly.
Skip, you have a question?
But why would you do a appraisal on the low side when he's already presented a plan for building houses on it? You wouldn't, if I was the owner of the property and you came in with a bid way down low I would legally see my lawyer and say the town of Rutland is not appraising the property accordingly.
So the answer to your question, because I don't totally disagree with what you're saying, according to the land use consultant, and if you look at the state statute, it doesn't define what an appraisal is. And
Yeah, but
this,
the thing is to be honest with people. Come on. This is
listen.
what this whole thing, like people are so deceitful that it's not funny at all. I mean, let's be real. Give them an honest price, get an honest appraisal for the property for what it's being used for.
So the clear answer to your question is there's no way that we can get an appraisal within 30 days that would do the certified appraisal. It's impossible.
I don't know who you're talking to, but I'll bet there's somebody out there who would do it.
I talked to I actually talked to 3 different appraisers, and I talked to our town assessor. All of them basically laughed and said appraisals are done, or the way they're booking appraisals is 6 months out. And I talked to Foster, who's one of the big firms in the area, and he, I said, can you do it any faster? He said, best case scenario, if, maybe 3 months, but even that, he seemed unlikely. So that's just what's going on. And the town assessor, RG, he made it clear too that, you were never gonna get appraisal done in 30 days.
I have a tough time believing that.
Huh? I can only tell you what the appraisers themselves told me, so.
Yep.
Well, like I said, I mean, in my opinion, if we had 3 boards that expressed an interest, I think we should at least entertain what the value is before we make any decisions on. I mean, this board is not making a decision or giving any kind of opinion as to whether we're going to purchase this property or not. We're simply making a decision based on interest of the 3 different boards who have responded. And I think in order to make a fair decision, we need to have an idea of what the value is going to be and what type of, what we're talking about as far as the purchase of the property, and what it would cost and whether it would be feasible or whether it would be of interest, if the board feels it would be of interest to the town. So right now, we're just deciding on the appraisal issue. I don't know if, and I understand Skip's point as well, and I'm not really, this other type of an appraisal was news to me too, so I'm not really sure how much information that's going to give us, or if that's going to give us enough of information, because it's going to be a starting point on negotiation. So if it's way off the ballpark, then it's we're still going to have to come to an agreement between the owners and the town. But it would at least give us an insight as to
a ballpark,
any kind of a value of what we're looking at all. So.
And the other thing is, my understanding for reading the 61A MGL is for intent to convert. If the landowner isn't happy with the appraisal that the town provides, then the landowner can get their own appraisal. And if the landowner and town do not agree, then they agree, mutually agreed upon to move forward. So it's not, Skip, I wholly understand.
Look, if you're going to go in and appraise somebody's property, you got that property, I'm going to appraise it as farmland. You know where that is? All right?
But
now, the town has already got paperwork for subdivision, or for house lots, not subdivision, because they are not A&R lots. They already got a plan for it, so the town should be assessing or appraising it for house lots, not for farmland or for use for parks or recreation and that stuff, where the price of is going to be so low that you would even laugh at it.
I don't know that we have another alternative. We either have to say pass, or we do our best.
No, I don't have any problem getting the appraisal, but let's get an honest appraisal, not something.
But we don't have time to get an honest appraisal before our time expires. That's what we're hearing.
Okay.
Well, and I guess my point was that
I shouldn't be honest because it is honest.
the landowner is going to come back with more of a, if you're saying an honest appraisal, and then that's when we have to negotiate and say, you're right, this is, but this is all we can get to get any kind of an answer back to these boards as far as looking at the process and whether there's any interest in it.
So let me add this, Mr. Chairman, because I truthfully think the state law is ludicrous and that it only gives you 30 days to act, because that is completely illogical. It doesn't make sense to anybody I've talked to, but that's what the law says. So we're stuck with this law that doesn't make sense, because there has to be recognition that there's no way by the time the letter of intent comes to you within 30 days you can get an appraisal done. Most towns can't even get their money for the appraiser in 30 days, never mind actually an appraisal done. So I completely think this is ludicrous, this process, but we're kind of stuck with it is sort of the sad part about all of this.
So if the owner of this property comes back and says, I sold it to Clea Blair for X number of $1.5 million, he doesn't even have to get an appraisal.
I think.
No, he doesn't. He's selling it to a developer. This is what the whole catch is. This guy wants to be his own developer and he didn't come in with a price to begin with.
Right. I can only refer you
Can I
to.
speak?
I'm sorry. I can only
Do we want
refer
to
you
entertain outside comments on
the state
appraisal
statute.
process?
I mean,
I mean, does the board have any objection to getting?
Nope, I have no
What's
problem.
the question?
I guess we
You're
have
three
like
people
three
now.
hands up now, I guess. All right, all right, Tim, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, the first thing is, this is a conversion. There's no selling it to Blair, so that's off the table.
Right.
Second thing through the chair, if we have to wait 3 to 6 months, how is the landowner who just got this A&R January 11th, recorded in the Registry of Deeds, going to be able to do any better than us? So I'm struggling with this fair and great appraisal, because if he went and got an appraisal before the A&R, I got a problem with that, because then there's some questions going on. So assume that he just went to get an appraisal January 12th, reported A&R, and it's 3 to 6 months. He's going to be just as long as we are, with an extra month added into it. So I'm struggling with that. So those are my two comments. Is that this is a conversion. It's not taking it out of 61A and 61B like normally is done. So the landowner is in charge of this entire process, not a developer.
So if I could, first of all, Tim, thank you, and you're right on point in terms of the conversion issue. It's interesting because as I read the state statute and the way it was explained to me from the attorney and others, the appraisals, is that this statute is written completely in favor of a landowner and the landowner's rights, is the way this statute was drafted with the 30-day provision. Because it doesn't say anything that I read that says it says the town has to present within 30 days the appraisal, but I didn't see, and then it says that the owner can go and get his own appraisal, but I didn't see any time limit for how long the owner has to get an appraisal. That wasn't there. Now, the sad part about all this is if we go out and get an appraisal, he gets on an appraisal, at any time, the landowner can say, you know what, I've decided not to do the conversion, I'm just pulling out, we're not moving forward. He can do that at any time within the process, too. So no matter what we spend to move forward, if they just change their mind and say, well, I'm going to wait 6 months or a year to do this, they can just withdraw the whole thing.
That's Ron, that's not 100% sure, because if he A&R'd the property and it's still in 61 or 61A, I think he has till October to figure out that legal standpoint, because 61A and 61 are based on sizes of property, 5 acres and forestry land. So there'd be a little bit of issue to come up if that was considered A&R property and not 61A, 61B anymore. And again, I don't know, I'm not an attorney, but I would question that.
All right, Steph, you had a question?
Steph? Turn on your microphone at the lower left-hand corner of the screen.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can now.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just a citizen here that maybe can do a little bit of math. And
Okay, I'm sorry, so can we just get your name and address so it's for the record so that we know who's speaking?
sure, it's Jason Lee, 18 Patriot Lane.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, again, I understand the point of everything that's being said here. And if the town had resources to realistically go after this land, I'd be all for it. But I just listened to about a half an hour talking about $30,000 of gravel. So is it, and now we're talking about spending tens of thousands of dollars on appraisals and going through this, and then what? What does it was mentioned before, does the town have an intention with the land? And even if they did, would there really realistically be resource options to be able to pursue it? Or are we citizens gonna have to pay for that?
Right, so it's like, we haven't gotten to that point. We had 3 boards that expressed an interest, so in respect to them, I mean, we asked them to review it and, notify the board if there's an interest. If 3 boards have an interest, I think we need to, at least go through a process to find out what the value is, and then to assess whether it's something that's feasible for the town to fund whichever way is most practical. But that's all down the road. Right now, we need to know what the value would be and what it would cost the town before making any decisions, and whether it's going to be something that's going to benefit the town to justify the cost. So.
Right. I'm just saying, I mean, it doesn't take a law degree or an appraisal degree to know that this is millions of dollars worth of land we're talking about here. It's just a simple statement. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, did you have a question?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, this is Dave Dolan. I'm a member of the Ag Committee here in town.
Address too, please. Full name and address.
Right. Yeah, 17 Ware Road.
Did you get that, Tamika?
Can you say it one more time?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that just so that the
Sure. Yeah, I live at 17 Ware Road in
and
Rutland.
Ware Road, and your full name?
Excuse me?
And your full name was Dave what?
David Dolan.
Dolan. Okay.
Dolan.
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 Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so, Ron, I know you mentioned that you did get the quote in from the appraiser.
Yeah,
Have you
the
shared
quote, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, have you shared it with anyone on the select board, or?
Yeah, I emailed it to him this afternoon and just told him it was $2,000 at the beginning of my conversation.
All right, yeah, so.
For the restrictive
my point-
appraisal.
Yeah, so I heard Selectman Clark mention, hey, get a good appraisal. Why bother with this appraisal that is going to maybe look at the ag end of it rather than looking at, hey, there's X amount of house lots there, and that's really where the appraisal should be focused on. Is, hey, how many of these house lots are got the A&R already? So if you look at that appraisal. It goes in quite a bit of detail, really, and they even specify that there's more than half of those. I think there's 22 lots in all proposed lots, but there's more than half of those they're showing in like zone. Again, without going into the big detail on the Worcester Watershed, but there's several of these lots that are in zone A and C. And the appraisal is like, hey, if you have an appraiser come in and look at, hey, these are all these house lots, let's bang them out at X dollar value a house lot, and here's your appraisal number, that would be really wrong to do. Because a lot of these, again, more than half of these lots are on the Worcester Watershed. And again, there's a whole MGL on that whole gig. And from what I understand, just from reading the appraisals, the appraisers, estimate their quote on what they would do if we should hire them. This is what they would do, and they're calling it right out, and they're saying, yeah, it's like a lot of these lots aren't going to be buildable, and this is why the city of Worcester Watershed is very interested in the property also, and I'm sure you folks know that. So the people that are thinking a couple grand might be a waste of money, I think it'd be a really good thing to have, because the appraisal is going to be a good appraisal. It's not a joke appraisal. They're looking at that land and the quality of the land, not just, hey, look, the planning board gave out 22 house lots, A&R lots, and it's like, well, that's wonderful, but that doesn't mean they're all buildable. So that's where we got to stop and remember that and say, yeah, I think the appraisal would be a really smart thing to do. It would give us a base. I think I heard Ron say that. It would give us something. And and going beyond that, we know no matter what we get for an appraisal, the town gets, the seller is going to say, guess what? We think it's worth more, and they will pay for another appraisal anyhow. So us not getting this first appraisal done, I think that would be wrong. So again, I wanted to clear that up on the appraisal that we did get a quote on. I think it's a good, well worth the money appraisal. And I just wanted, again, I know Selectman Clark was kind of like, hey, it's a joke. It's not, they're looking at farmland. No, they're looking at what lots are there and what's been approved.
We all understand that. We all understand it.
Okay, all right, so, that's about all I have to say with that. And I appreciate your, consideration doing that. I think it'd be well worth it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, like, as I said, out of respect for, we asked the boards to review it. We had 3 boards of interest. I think we need to at least, this board has been clear that we want to look at opportunities for open space or opportunities for the town, so I don't think we can just pass it up without at least making some kind of consideration as to whether there's any interest or not. And I don't think we can do that until we have some kind of a value to work with, so, and like I said, the board has made no decision, and if it's gonna cost millions of dollars, and it may not be feasible at all, so I don't necessarily wanna go and spend $10,000 if we don't have to. If we can get an idea and start the process and see whether it's at all feasible, I think it's, maybe worth an investment of $2,000 to at least start the discussion and see if it's something that the town would pursue or not, without just bypassing it.
And I think once we get an appraisal and a sense as to what the value of the land is and what opportunities, we hear back from boards and commissions what opportunities there are, I think through the first right of refusal, the board could also work with a nonprofit or another entity to basically transfer that first right of refusal to an entity that the board agrees upon.
They've always been, any nonprofit has been able to come in and do that.
Right.
Used to be
the Land Conservancy.
the Land
or,
Conservancy, the place out toward Boston,
right.
western part of the state and whatever.
So to the point as to how the town would fund it, I mean, maybe the town does fund it. Maybe the town decides that they want to work with a nonprofit. I don't know what that process, how that's going to play out until we have an appraisal and next steps.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, so in my presentation I gave to you in my memo, it explained just that, and talking to the consultant for the Agricultural Commission, there are a number of grants that potentially could be applied through. You'd have to, as you say, turn over the property first to some kind of land trust or in order to do that, but it's possible, although the consultant told me this land is not particularly good, to apply for a land grant, which is up to 62% of the value of the property. She didn't feel that we would be a good candidate based upon the land as she looked at it. And then there's another grant that, in theory, you could get up to 50% reimbursement for. So, again, you first have to, I want to make it really clear, you first have to turn the property over to some type of land trust, and then they would work with you to apply for those funding. But there is a potential, I think, realistically, for possibly up to 50% of the purchase price to be reimbursed to the town. That is possible under what the consultant says.
But
it's a lot of work, but it's possible.
You turn it over to land trust, then the town has no control over it whatsoever.
Okay, so let's be clear, because it's a very good point. When you turn it over to a land trust, in effect, what that means is it's supposed to be in conservation as a point. But under the law for this type of transfer, the land trust can give you back can use 30% of that land for development. Mm-hmm. So you can have an agreement during the time you turn it over to landfill that the town would have a choice of 30% of the land to be able to develop that land. So if in theory the town wanted to put a DPW or something, you couldn't build I don't know if 30% is big enough to build a school, but there are 30% of the land is something the town could do some development with. Or we could sell up to 30% of land to a private developer, even to build houses to pay for the rest of that property, in theory.
I just wanted to put it out there for the public that there are additional funding mechanisms in addition to straight, town pockets.
But the majority of the land would have to be in, as Skip has pointed out, into a land trust, into conservation.
Okay. So I guess what we're looking at is whether we want to authorize the town administrator to pursue.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
a little bit different than that, because you have to recommend to the Finance Committee that the Board of Selectmen would like to have that recommend to them that they transfer $2,000 reserve into appraisal account for this purpose.
Right, but wouldn't we do a reserve request to the Finance Committee?
Well, we can, but I just want you to, basically what I told the Finance Committee is that, we need to get your opinion before they meet to decide if the Selectmen are in favor of doing the transfer. So I think they would like to know that. in their decision that the Board of Selectmen wants to, is basically asking for that
But if we
transfer.
send over a transfer request, that's
we'll do
meaning
that. Yeah,
we're
I just wanna know
interested
that that's
in doing it.
part of
So
the-
we can do that without putting off a meeting or anything else. If the board decides that we want to pursue it, then we would,
That gets lumped into
I'll put in a
the-
transfer request for them to them.
for the $2,000.
Yeah, and that's fine, I'm just suggesting the board, because we can't actually do it without the money, that we recommend to the finance board that the board supports that, and would
We
like to.
would move
put it
forward
into
and
account.
put in a request for,
Yeah.
I mean, is that what the board's leaning towards, or interests, or? You know,
Does Tim have, I don't know if you want to entertain.
I don't think Tim put his hand down. Tim, do you still have another question, or you didn't put your hand down?
Yeah, Lyndon, all I was gonna say through the chair is, before you guys do any approval or anything like that, I agree that you should do that, but I would contingency it on the town getting those letters back from the landowner. What if he decides not to, or he or she of the trust decides not to do anything? That's the only thing I would do about this, is I would contingent it on those letters coming back.
I mean, yeah.
That's it, that's all I want to say.
Tim, I wouldn't do it anyway without that letter in first,
So
but
upon
you're
receipt,
correct.
upon
letter of
receipt
intent.
of intent, we would, so, all right, Leah, you want to make a motion?
Yeah.
Because I'm getting really tired.
I'll make a motion that the board work with the town, authorize the town administrator to put in a reserve fund transfer of $2,000 to an appraisal account and move forward with the appraisal quote that we received today from EWH Anderson. Is that the?
And then upon receipt.
Sorry, contingent upon receiving
A new letter of
new notification of intent to convert. Or intent to sell. Well, no, because intent to sell would be a
Yeah,
different
so
process.
intent to convert.
Oh, Tamika, you got all that?
Sorry,
I got it.
All right, do we have a
She went to what
second?
she wanted anyway.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, roll call.
Whitman, I.
Benoit, aye.
Nichols, eye.
Nay.
All right. Just one other quick thing I just remembered. I know that Dick Williams had asked about checking with Anita about whether the roads were certified. Isn't that what your question was last time? Did we look into that?
I'm not sure I understand the
That
question.
has, that has to
It's
go
clearly
through Joe.
it's clearly a chapter 90 road, and we can use chapter 90 for.
No. He meant in general that our roads are
I'm
certified.
talking about the whole town,
All the
so we
roads.
don't go through this again. We will have a certified list of all the town
Oh, no,
roads.
this'll happen again.
What?
This'll happen.
Well, no, he just wants to
Is
know
there
if
such
our
a thing
roads
as
are
a
certified.
certified roads, Joe? I'm not
Town, he
familiar
means
with.
town approved roads. Every,
Right.
town,
So- but
every
that you have
road,
to actually certify that
Cot
they're
Road or
approved.
whatever is approved as a road. I know of one or two in town that are approved, but I'm
There's
not
a lot
gonna
of
say
them
where
that are
they're
not.
at.
If you're talking about the meets town specifications, is a.
No, as a town road. You got down at Cool Sandy Beach.
Yep.
All them are roads, but they're not town
They're
roads.
private roads, right.
And private roads.
But they're
We
actually
want
officially supposed to be
town roads.
certified by the clerk. Is it the clerk's office that certifies them?
office.
Yeah.
Clerk's
Does
office.
such a thing exist, or how does that?
There's a couple different ways of doing it, but I suggest you refer that to the town clerk.
Right. Well, that was the question. So,
So do we
I mean, I
have
know.
Ron request that from the town
well, I
clerk?
think that was Mr. Williams' request. Is that
Yeah, well, I don't
he
think it
asked
got
Anita-
that far.
So can I ask a question, Mr. Williams, just because I've never heard of this before in terms of this way you're explaining to me.
Well, I'll
Are you
bring
familiar with
back
other
some
towns doing this
18
certified list?
1880 up to, I think,
1846.
2000 something, town reports. And way back, they used to have certified road list.
And who developed that? Was that something the town clerk developed? Who developed that?
It was the planning board way back when that did it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's their function now.
Well, it's the
But
clerk
I-
that certifies it, right?
It's Anita that has to have it certified.
So you're asking me to check with Anita to see if she has such a list?
Has such a list and or when the last time it was ever done
If you don't have one, make one.
and make one, correct.
Okay, I'll ask her. This is the first time I've ever heard of a certified list of roads, so I'll check with Anita and find out where we go from here.
Some cities and towns do what's called an official town map.
Probably lost all your
Some cities and towns do what's called an official town map, but you have to maintain it, and I
Probably have
don't
it.
see this being maintained in this environment.
And it may be costly to take from wherever it was to wherever it is. I don't know. We'll have to see, Dick. I don't know.
If we can just get an answer
Let me
as to
find
whether
out.
it was done or not.
Yeah,
So
let me find out.
And I apologize that I didn't bring that up in the beginning, but
No, that's
I
okay.
knew that Dick had asked that question.
And-
So we only have one more thing on the agenda,
Joe's got
and
a
that is
question.
the,
Mr. Chairman?
yeah.
Mr. Buckley's asking a
Oh.
question.
I'm just gonna double check with the Commonwealth. They may have changed how some of that's interpreted now, so I will also look.
So you coordinate with Anita so she didn't unnecessarily
Yeah, but I'll probably
research it.
reach out to the state, because they've made some changes in how they determine that.
Okay.
And I don't know if I may, I don't know if the pavement study is helpful in any of that or not. I don't know how the determination as to what roads were looked at, if it was all, how they obtained the town road information for the pavement study.
I generated.
Oh. Ta-da! Okay.
We used Mass Highway GIS data
Yeah,
and then modified it for the purpose.
thank you.
Just said I just so happened to found a map, 1952, and it showed a road going through a piece of property. And when I showed Anita and I showed Dave, our town planner, their mouth dropped because if a certain individual ever got hold of it, holy Toledo,
Oh, yeah.
I can see a subdivision coming in tomorrow.
You said too much already.
All right. Next on the agenda is the policy that we had asked the town administrator to develop when the question came up regarding acceptance of grants. I don't know if everybody had an opportunity to review it. I know that Carol and I had reviewed it.
Sure, can I make just a couple of quick comments on this?
Yeah, sure.
So quite frankly, this was when I was hoping, I have a whole list of town administrators and managers to ask if they have such a policy, and I sent it out to everybody, and I got a single response on this.
Yeah.
So it obviously is something that a lot of people, the towns don't have. So this is, I spent a lot of time on the internet searching all over the place and found bits and pieces and kind of built this from scratch. So I really wanted you guys, I put it as a draft to see. I think it's pretty good. The big question here, I think, really is the 50,000 number something you're okay with? Anything smaller than $50,000 would not have to come to the board for acceptance. There are numerous grants that are police and fire grants that are standard every year that, in my mind, don't really need to come, but I didn't know if that 50,000 number was something you were comfortable or not. So by all means, you guys, I asked as a draft if you guys want to make any changes. There's nothing in here, the treasurer collector suggested we put something in the gifts, about gifts in here, and I explained to her that we just did that. Remember, we not long ago did the gift policy, so there's no need to add gifts to this. This just deals strictly with grants.
My problem with this $50,000 grant, if there's any matching funds whatsoever, that shouldn't be there. Should be
Well-
zero matching funds. If it's going to be a grant,
Right,
And it
I
should
think
not-
I said that in here, Skip, because I agree with you. The Rutland Select Board must approve all grants in excess of $50,000. The Select Board must also approve any grant that requires a local match or a current or future town appropriation. So that's the
Right.
requirement, that if there is a grant or there's some future cost as a result of accepting that grant, then the Board of Selectmen would have to approve it. I wanted to protect, I 100% agree with your point.
okay.
That's the first line of the grant, of the draft grant. It's the first thing that would probably require local match or current.
That's gotta be in this book then.
Yeah, it's in the book, it's the last one.
Yeah, it's the very last page.
I have a question for under, and this is just a
Under what?
I got it right here.
accounting.
Yeah.
You have grant or gift, and if we already dealt with gift, should we take grant or gift out of all of?
Just
like,
take or gift out, yeah.
Right, any part where it's mentioned gift,
Yep.
just take that out. I assume that there is I don't remember off the top of my head the gift part. I assume that there was a similar accounting piece to
Yeah,
gifts.
there is in that,
So-
and actually there's something in the gifting, it mentions grants too, but this because it's the grant, specifically the grant acceptance policy, this would override that little section that's in the gift policy. This really defines it a lot more than the gift policy words, there's just a few in it. But you're correct, we should take out the or gift, the wording. And this has been given, this was sent out to the treasurer collector and the town accountant. and no comments came back.
Did department heads have any say about the 50,000? I think 50,000, like today might be fine. I just worry that but I don't know how to rectify that.
Well, it's really not a problem because this is a policy. It
can
literally
always
can be
just
changed
update it.
easy. It's not like a bylaw where it's locked up.
Yeah.
Here we could simply come back and say, you know what, it's time to upgrade it. Let's change it to 75 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's just it's a board policy.
Okay.
If it was a bylaw, I would totally agree with you.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll be taking out a lot of gifts. It's almost every other line, so it's gonna be a lot of.
Yeah, anywhere there's a gift, it'll be
Yeah.
taken out. Grant. Yeah, there's in the first paragraph. Oh, that's the state law, though. That's why.
Well, no,
First
but
one.
it's on every,
I
it's
think all
almost
of
on
number
every
5
line.
Okay.
needs to
Anywhere in the
go.
policy
Yeah.
part that says or gift,
All
we'll
of number 5
remove.
is acknowledging gifts.
Yeah, it's
And
annoying.
I didn't reconcile this with the gift policy to make sure that so that's why I wanted to ask
Yep.
if we should keep gift in or.
Right now, well, you don't want to duplicate, because we already have a policy on it.
Yep.
We should not have gift on it.
After I take out the word gift too, if you guys voted, I'll just send you a copy of it. But it'll go in our policy book anyway, and I'll forward this out to all department heads so everybody knows what's going on.
Can it go to department heads and boards and commission chairs?
And actually, boards and
Because,
commissions too.
I know some do a little bit more, like, I'm just thinking, like, I know the 300th and 4th of July sometimes do cultural grants and everything.
Yep.
But also, I know some other boards and commissions work with CMRPC that might be
Yep.
a little bit
And
different.
the reason I put in that next line, all grants prior to acceptance must be submitted to the town administrator for review, and if required by this policy board. I wanted me to be review, so I still see them all. That way I can look to make sure there's no match or anything else
Yeah.
before, and then I'll forward the ones that have to come to you guys that forward them. So I wanted that me to be able to see everything. I don't want, so if a board or commission had any kind of grant, it would come to me first,
Mhm.
or the town administrator, whoever.
There's
it
some
might be.
things we need to sign that were on previous agendas. So
Yeah, so, do you want a motion for this, or?
No,
Okay.
yep.
So I'll make a motion that, the board accept and adopt the Rutland policy for accepting grants for municipal government pending taking out the pieces relating to the gift portion.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Clock eye.
Benoit eye.
Whitman, aye.
And Nichols eye. Thank you for that.
And
Yeah, we'll just sign those, because those were all addressed up previously. We were waiting for information, and they complete.
okay.
Economic development, you have a meeting coming up, no news
Wednesday
on-
night.
on update on the website stuff. Boards and commissions, we're still trying to get, filling some vacancies, that's still on the sign
You
right
notice
now?
it was on the sign, yep.
Okay. Human resources, you guys are still working on that project, and finance committee is in the midst of the budget.
Yep.
Yes, Tamika?
Just really quick on the town website, the Concom, Melissa Danza and I worked, and we updated the Concom page on the website, so that makes
okay.
you guys
That's
know
awesome.
now.
So a lot of pages have been updated. I know my page is an updated Concom. There's been a variety of them that have been updated. We put in the economic development page and created that. So the website is being improved all the time.
Okay, great. All right, does anybody have anything else?
Motion adjourned.
That sounds good. Do I have a
Whitman seconds.
And roll call?
Clock eye.
Whitman, aye.
Yes, go. Aye. Aye. Sorry, I thought you were showing me something.
Nichols eye.